Hello everybody, it's Fufu here, and today I'm going to be bringing you another Why We Need video. It's a video series where I discuss potential features that could be added in Pokemon Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. Today I'll be discussing new Pokemon forms, and obviously I do this with my buddy John. So over on my channel we'll be considering new Pokemon forms for Oricorio that already has a number of dancing forms, so we'll be considering new forms for that Pokemon. But on John's channel we're looking at a different Pokemon, aren't we, John?
Over on my channel, we're going to be going over why we need new wishy-washy forms for Pokemon Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. I'm really excited about the possibility of new forms for these Pokemon, especially after the revealed Lycanroc Dusk form, as it really does seem to point towards a few slight changes to a lot of these Pokemon in Alola in these new games. Very exciting stuff, but for now we need to focus on the new Oricorio forms.
So what we want are new forms for Oricorio. Oricorio already has 4 forms because it learns different dances by eating different nectars. So we want more forms for this Pokemon in Pokemon Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon.
The biggest reason of why we think it might happen is really because of the Lycanroc Dusk form. The new form is really cool, but the number one thing that stands out to me is that it looks very similar to the Midday form. And this is actually really exciting to me, as it really does point to the whole alternate universe thing, and that things might be slightly different in these new games. They've already made a lot of talk of this, that you're gonna be able to find different Pokemon. They've already shown a little bit of the game where the routes look a little bit different. It's the same area, but things just look a little bit different. It may be a little bit more vibrant, and in the Dusk form, it's a little bit brighter. So one thing that I'm very sure we will see is more Pokemon just like Lycanroc, that have different forms in the new games, but they're slightly different. It works with what we've seen with the new Pokemon. I mean, like one of the only new Pokemon we've seen so far, and it goes along with the alternate universe thought, and everything is perfect there. And to go along with the alternate universe thought, there's a very good chance in this different universe that the nectar is slightly different, which would make the different Oricorio forms slightly different. I mean, when you think of Pokemon that have multiple forms in Pokemon Sun and Moon, Lycanroc probably comes to mind, and then the Oricorio forms come to mind. And if Lycanroc's going to get a different form, I wouldn't be surprised to see Oricorio get a new form. We've actually heard about this in a different place before, and one of the leaks we've talked about, it actually does point to Oricorio specifically and says some Pokemon with different forms will get different ones in Pokemon Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon. We've already seen that with Lycanroc, and then it also points to Oricorio. So it has a little bit of evidence. It doesn't mean this leak is true in any way, shape, or form, but at least it has something going for it. And to go along with that, it says there will be different Oricorio forms, one which is a ballet-themed ice flying type Pokemon. So very good chance that with this new form we will see other ones. I am pretty excited about it, and honestly I think it's a pretty good possibility.
So how could this be implemented? Well, in Pokemon Sun and Moon, Oricorio ate different nectars which made it turn into its different dancing forms. In Pokemon Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, where it is meant to happen in a different timeline, maybe different plants and different flowers have grown on the different islands. So that means that Oricorio, when it eats the nectar from these different flowers, it could well turn into different forms. And so there are a number of different colours that it could turn into, which would change it into a different colour form. But yeah, and that also goes hand in hand with the number of dances that new Oricorio forms could be based off. This could come from so many different areas of the world. We've already seen some interesting ones being implemented here, because though Alola has a Hawaiian theme, we've got dances from all over the world. We've got Japanese and Spanish dances. So it's really interesting, and it means that it could definitely take influences from other parts of the world for more dances. So there are some examples. I found some artwork from some very talented artists. I'll leave the links in the description of some potential forms. I think one that is very likely and that a lot of people would speculate about is a ballet form, which would maybe be fairy typing, but you can see some more examples here of different typings that you could get. You could get the ice typing. There's one that's like a Russian dancing ice typing one, which would make sense because Russia's kind of cold, and so if it learns a Russian dance, then it could become an ice type. And yeah, there are loads more. So you could have like a rock dancing one, like headbanger, and all sorts of crazy things. Like, it might seem a bit far-fetched, but at the same time, the weirder ones are actually probably the more interesting ones that I quite like to see. There are some really cool typings as well that you could get. So I think that there's a lot of ways that this could be implemented, but the main way that this could be implemented would be pretty simple. You just have different plants with different nectar that you feed to your Oricorio, and it learns a different dance and becomes a different form. And you could get all the different forms, so you could have the same forms as Sun and Moon and then just extras, or you could just have 4 different ones in the new games because they don't have the same plants as Sun and Moon, so you might not see the ones from Sun and Moon in these new games.
Why it would be awesome is really easy to go over, and honestly, there might just be too many things to talk about for this little segment. The number one thing, at least in my opinion, is the new typings would be so cool. There's so many different possibilities of what they could do, and so many different cool dancing forms they could do. There's so many different versions of, way people have danced and things they could base the styles off of. And that in itself will be really cool to see the different forms, how they look, the colors, the shinies, so many cool different things going on there. But the biggest thing is all of the different types. I mean, the leak talked about ice flying, but there's so many different ones. We could get a cool steel flying, poison flying, ground flying. Maybe we're gonna get like fairy flying, rock flying. There's just anything. We could get any 2 typings of a typing and then flying, and they would all be really cool. It would be cool to see how they explain why this dance goes with this different typing, and there's more variety. And one thing that me and Sam have really talked about, which is really cool, is with more forms, everyone has a chance to find what's their favorite. That's a cool thing about Pokemon. There's so many different ones. Everyone dislikes different ones, and everyone likes different ones. And with all of the different forms, everyone can have a new favorite. And it's cool, especially with the 2 different games. It gives them something to really distinguish from both of them, and it'll be nice to try to collect, maybe all 8 of them. We don't know how many they're gonna make. Maybe it's just 1, maybe it's 2, maybe it's more and they go crazy, but it would still be very exciting to try to collect them and then just see which ones are better for different battling styles.
In terms of how Oricorio forms might change in battle, I don't think there will be huge changes. I think the stats are most likely to stay the same. We could see a shift because Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon is a different timeline. We could see the Oricorios just behave differently, so maybe their special attack and physical attack stats might swap, and the same goes for their physical and special defense stats. But outside of that, I wouldn't predict there to be too much of a change in stats. It would be interesting to see that change though, because currently Oricorio has the ability Dancer, so they can copy dancing moves, and certain dancing moves like Swords Dance and Dragon Dance are a little bit useless for the Oricorios because they aren't generally physical attackers. But if they do become physical attackers in the new game and they have access to these moves through Dancer, that would be really cool, and it would mean that Oricorio could have different usability and it could switch in on Pokemon using those moves and get boosts that they could actually use. So that would be an interesting change, but I wouldn't expect it particularly. Having new typings for these new forms would be really cool though. Oricorio isn't used too much at the moment, and the form that's used the most is the Ghost form, just because Revelation Dance is actually quite a powerful Ghost move when it's used by the Sensu form, in the lower tiers that is. But it's a really cool Pokemon, and I think that it would be cool to see some more typings where the Revelation Dance would be very powerful. Now, Flying type is actually already been paired with every other type, so there are no new type combinations that we could have with these new Oricorio forms. However, it would be nice to see more of a certain typing. So we don't have many Rock Flying so far. We've got Archeops, we've got Aerodactyl. But they're mainly physical attackers, so it would be nice to have an Oricorio that's more of a special attacker with that Revelation Dance. And what's cool is that spamming Rock-type Revelation Dance could actually be quite powerful because there are no immunities to Rock-type. The same goes for Fairy typing. We've got Togekiss that is a flying fairy, but having a Revelation Dance Oricorio with that typing could be really, really good. And some other typings to consider, maybe Steel type, that's not too common with Celesteela and Skarmory, maybe Ground type, and maybe Poison type. So we've got Gligar for the Ground type, we've got the Zubat family for the Poison type. But again, those are more physical attackers, so having a Revelation Dance with those typings could be very, very useful. So I don't think it would have a huge impact in that regard, but I think it could be quite cool to see. Now, one more idea I had was about new moves. I don't think the Oricorios will naturally learn any moves that they don't already learn. I think their learn set would be exactly the same in Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. What might be different though is we might get move tutors in Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. We generally see this in follow-up games to a main game series, that there may be move tutors. So Oricorio might benefit from those, and the new forms might benefit from those. But what I would really like to see implemented is a dancing move tutor specifically for Oricorio. I think that would be so cool. So if a dance tutor was there just to teach Oricorio dancing moves, Oricorio obviously gets a dancer ability, so it can copy any dance move, but it can't learn all the dance moves. So certain ones that would be really useful would be especially Quiver Dance, because Oricorio's stats are pretty good for a special sweeper, it just can't boost them very easily, but with Quiver Dance that would be perfect. It would also maybe be quite useful to see LUNAR Dance, which is Cresselia's signature move. What it does is it causes the Pokemon to faint, but it then heals your next Pokemon coming in. And on a relatively fast Pokemon like Oricorio, it can really help your team out. So I think that would be super cool to see, and it would make Oricorio a lot more useful. So I would really like to see that. So now for the scoring, how likely do I think this will be? After seeing Lycanroc's Dusk form being revealed, I think that this has become a lot more likely. We've seen that certain Pokemon are going to get new forms in the new games, and this would just be another example of that. So we've already seen that it's being implemented once. I think this is a far more likely than having new Pokemon added to the game and new dex entries. This wouldn't even be a new dex entry, this would just be Oricorio. So I think that this is far more likely than a lot of other things that we've already discussed. I think it's more likely than other Alolan forms, for example. So what I'm thinking is that for this, I'm going to score it quite highly. I don't think I've scored anything as highly for how likely yet. I'm going to score this an 8 out of 10. It's also been hinted at in leaks. Not that they've been confirmed at all. These are unconfirmed rumours, really. And though there's no basis to say that it's more likely because of these, that in combination with seeing new forms already being talked about, I think that this is quite likely. So I'm going to give this an 8 out of 10 for how likely.
When it comes to how cool this would be, we unfortunately had to rank it a little bit lower than most things we've talked about, and the biggest reason is when you compare this to a Mega Pokemon, a new Pokemon, or an Alolan form, it just isn't as cool. Oricorio is awesome, and getting new forms would be great, but the stats would most likely stay the same for those new forms. So even though they would have a different typing and they look different, it just wouldn't be different enough to get super excited about it. I mean, a new Alolan form is completely different than the old Pokemon. I mean, different typing, maybe different stats, moves, this, that, and the other ability. Everything's going on there, and in Megas, it's 100 or plus 100 base stat total. So those are definitely going to be a little bit more exciting, and because of that, these can't be more exciting than those, and in general, it wouldn't change the game a ton. They're not the biggest impact. They're still very cool. I'd be very excited about it, but in general, we had to be fair, and we ranked it at a 5 out of 10.
So despite that low coolness rating, just because it won't have as big an impact as some of the other things we've discussed, the final score here is 6.5 out of 10, which is a very respectable score, and it will be something that I would really like to see in these new games. Please let me know in the comment section what you think, whether you would like to see new Oricorio forms and what dances you think they will be based off, what typings you would like to see. But that's all for today on my channel. Now please go over to John's channel, show him some love there, watch his video on new wishy-washy forms, which is really interesting. There are some great ideas as to how this might happen. But yeah, so go over there, give the video a like, support this series, and just, yeah, say that you're having a good time. That's going to be all for today. I've been foofootoo, you've been awesome, and hopefully see you next time. Goodbye.